and welcome to the second episode of Chatting Transformation. I'm Barry, I'm a change and transformation specialist, and I've been in this industry for around 20 years now, having supported change and transformation activity across multiple industries in both the public and private sector. I've done the very junior jobs all the way up to leading significant change and transformation activity. And the whole point of this podcast is for me to talk about my experience, my opinions, my learnings from everything I've done, and hopefully pass some of that on to you so that your change and transformation journey is just that little bit easier. Today I'm going to answer a question that's been posed to me, which is, what is change and transformation, and do the two things mean the same thing? So before I get into that, we need to understand how businesses and organisations do what we call business as usual, which is their normal operations. So every kind of business out there has a business as usual, which is its bread and butter of how it does things and how it brings in revenue. And if you think about a table that kind of has performance on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal, you'll generally have, with business as usual activity, a line that's fairly regular. There might be a general up curve or a little bit of increase, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But there's always potential with business as usual that the world moves on, markets move on, consumer demand changes, and if you are still running with the same business as usual operations, you can actually see stagnation or even a decline in performance. What you can see is sometimes, I said, you get that slight kind of uptick as you go, and that could be due to things like continuous improvement. So continuous improvement is a tool to maintain and slightly improve business as usual with small scale targeted activity. It doesn't fundamentally alter the way things are done in a business, but it does go in and say, how can we just improve this a little bit better to eke a little bit more out of it, or to make this slightly easier, or to get a slightly better result. So it doesn't fundamentally change or alter the way things are done, but it does allow the organisation to keep improving performance. So you might see a kind of a nice slight kind of uptick, as I said, on the performance graph. But there is always the danger that the world is moving on, that things are changing, consumer demand, what people want, what the business is there to do. And that's where change and transformation comes in. And that's about creating a step change in that performance graph. So instead of just that line or that slight rise, we get a better increase, either a step change or a nice big kind of move upwards. And change and transformation activity does see changes to the way things are done. That's what it's all about. It's all about introducing new ways of working to deliver benefits, and I'll talk about that in a moment. It's something that's going to require significant investment of resources, of time, and significant amounts of attention. And it will generally be disruptive. Now, the aim with any change and transformation activity is that disruption will have a positive effect. But as with everything that's disruptive, you've always got to watch it, because there is a potential for a negative effect from it. But in general, you wouldn't be taking the risk of disrupting the organisation if you didn't have a very strong intention of creating a positive outcome at the end of it. And as I said, basically what you're trying to do is you're introducing new ways of working for the organisation, so you are changing the way things are fundamentally done, and those new ways of working are being designed to deliver benefits which are measurable improvements of a more significant magnitude than just a continuous improvement for the organisation. And business history is littered with examples of where this has gone really well, and there's also examples of where either transformation hasn't been executed very well and it's caused problems, or where organisations have ignored the need to change and transform and have effectively died out. I'm not going to... There's tons of examples on there, Blockbuster versus Netflix, all of those kind of things. There's loads of information out there about, you can go and find out about that. But that's fundamentally what change and transformation is. It's creating that step change for the organisation to create new ways of working that deliver significantly measurable benefits. Do change and transformation though mean the same thing? Now, if you're talking to academics and people that are in this field and really involved in it, you'll get a few different answers. The one that I'm most aware of is that change is seen to be about supporting and delivering the people element of transformation. Now, if you think back to episode 1, when we talked about the operating model and how the organisation or the people element of the operating model was significant, people are really the unlockers of transformation and change activity. You can put in all the new processes, you can put in all the new tooling, you can define what data you want to go through your operating model, but unless you get your people to work in the new way, i.e. that organisation starts to operate in line with the intended target operating model, then you're not going to see any change, any positive change, and actually all your work today is just going to be a sunk cost because you're going to see no improvement. So there's a big part of the industry will talk about change being focused on people and getting them to work in new ways to deliver those benefits. And might see things like change manager roles where it talks about communication, change engagement, all of that kind of thing. And again, there's lots of books. There's a whole course on it which I've done, change management, which is really interesting, and that is about getting people to work in those new ways to make the transformation sustainable. Another theory that I came across when I was looking at this question was that people see change as a kind of lower end of the scale and transformation at the more significant end of the scale. So change being something you're going to do to maybe one of the elements of the operating model. So again, it might be going back and saying, right, we're just going to renew a process. We're not going to change the organisation or the tooling or the information that flows through it. We're just going to do something that changes that process. Or alternatively, we're going to change the organisation, but actually the processes, the tooling and the data stay the same. Or alternatively, you're going to change the tooling, but the processes and the people will stay the same. And change kind of tackles just one element of the operating model, whereas transformation is more significant. It tackles multiple parts of the operating model. It will have an impact on culture. It will have an impact on the business outcomes, all of that kind of thing. I can see where people are going with that, but the challenge you've got there, and again, as we talked about in episode 1 with the operating model, which is why it's so fundamental to change and transformation, is if you start to tinker with just one of the elements of the operating model, you are going to affect the other lines. If you put a new system in, there's absolutely no way that your current process in your current organisation will not change at all. If you change your organisation, your people line around, then your processes and your tooling are going to have to be amended to take that into consideration. So I don't really subscribe to that model because it's not really, doesn't survive reality is how I would probably explain it. There's always going to be an impact, but I can see where they're going with it. I am aware that the change management being the people focused is very well understood in the industry. From my perspective, when I'm talking to anybody about it, I don't really differentiate between the two. And that's because the vast majority of stakeholders, and this includes people that are at senior levels in organisation that are maybe going out and recruiting for people to support them in their change and transformation activities. They might be looking for program staff, portfolio level staff, project managers, change managers. They might be looking for PMO people. They might be looking for agile coaches, scrum masters, product owners, all that kind of stuff. And they don't also really generally differentiate from it unless they've been really involved in it and they maybe subscribe to that first example of change being people focused. But I've talked to people about roles which have had change in the title. Actually, it's very clearly business transformation. I've had conversations with people about transformation that are very people focused. So for me, I don't tend to differentiate because the vast majority of stakeholders don't. And it really makes no difference to them. What they want is someone to come in and help them execute their journey in the best possible way. For me, it's And for a lot of stakeholders, if you're talking to the people that are being affected by the change transformation, they're really not up for an academic debate on the difference between change and transformation. They're more worried about the changes that are being made to them, what they need to do, is their job at risk, how is it going to, what training do they need to do, are they going to be able to perform as they've been doing, all of that kind of stuff. So for them it's much more important to understand how they will be affected by it. What is more important is that organisations that want to undergo change and or transformation have the right approach, the right resources, the attitude and culture in place to support successful transformation. And in future episodes we'll dive into what that needs to be. We'll talk about the need for high-level sponsorship, to understand the key roles around senior responsible owners, all of that kind of thing. But that is way more important than differentiating between the change and transformation tags, mainly because the vast majority of people don't differentiate between them. So yeah, I hope that's answered the question that I was kindly asked on LinkedIn in response to the first episode. We'll be talking more in future episodes, so please do continue to watch, listen in, and hopefully you're finding something useful from this podcast. Thank you.